So in 2016, I was a health intern at the UNHCR office in Kuala Lumpur, and that is the United Nations Refugee Agency. And my job was to come down and see refugees who come to seek help with regards to their health issues. So one day, there's this Rohingya gentleman who was about 20 years old. His name was Mo, and he came to the office seeking help. I went down to see him, and he has been complaining of cough and fever for about a couple of months, on and off. So as I sat down next to him, trying to find out and trying to figure out how to best help him, he shared with me his life story. Mo was, back in Myanmar, Mo was a brilliant student, a straight A student. He spoke 7 different languages, and he was about to sit for a very big national exam that would enable him to enter university. Just a few days before his final exam, his village was attacked and burned. So in the middle of the chaos, Mo fled his hometown, jumped onto a boat, battled the waves for a couple of weeks, and arrived in a country called Malaysia. So there he was, a 16 or 17-year-old boy with no money, no family, nothing. So when he arrived in Malaysia, the first thing he did was he approached a few colleges and universities and even high schools to ask if he could be accepted. None of them accepted him because he did not have the right documents. He did not have the money. And of course, because of that, he had to take up some odd jobs, which had a heavy toll on his health. And finally, from a brilliant straight A student who was about to enter university, just like many of you here, he became a homeless beggar, wandering from street to street, from highway to highway, seeking shelter. Now that encounter, ladies and gentlemen, left a very deep imprint in my heart. I could not sleep for a few days after seeing this gentleman. And I wondered how many children out there suffer the same fate because of the unfair and unjust systems that we have now in Malaysia and beyond. So in Malaysia today, we have roughly 180,000 refugees and asylum seekers who are registered. If you count the unregistered one, you might have more. And out of these 180,000, a quarter of them are children. That is about 45,000. Now these children in Malaysia, refugee children generally are not welcome into public schools. They don't have access into our formal education system. And the next best thing they have is what we call the alternative learning centers. And I'm sure many of you here have heard of that. So these alternative learning centers are generally schools that are built either by NGOs, by welfare organizations, and some of them are run by the refugee communities themselves. And if you have encountered any of these learning centers, you will know that they are not what a school is supposed to look like. They are not adequately funded. They don't have enough teachers, not even enough books, chairs, and tables. And many of these schools, so-called schools, are located in dangerous or places that are not meant for children. Despite the existence of about 128 registered alternative learning centers in our country today, surveys and studies have showed that 70% of refugee children today in Malaysia are out of school. That means only 30% have access to these learning centers. Now, what happens when a child is out of school? Okay, so there are many repercussions or serious implications when children don't have access to formal education. When children are out of school, they are more likely to get engaged in child labor. Okay, and child labor exists in our country, definitely. And child labor generally refers to dangerous and exploitative work that is very detrimental to a child's physical and psychological growth. When a child is out of school, especially a girl, she is more prone to become a victim of child marriage. When children are out of school, they are more prone to get engaged in child trafficking, drug trafficking, and many other crime activities which are harmful. Childhood is a very crucial period, as all of us know, and many studies and evidence have shown that the childhood period is very crucial and interventions at this point are most effective. So what should we do now? You probably have heard people telling you, okay, let's do more fundraising. Let's support this NGO. Let's build more alternative learning centers, right? So all these are not wrong, okay? These are also some of the things we can do and are helpful, but we have to think of something more systemic, more systematic, and more sustainable. So how do we do that? The solution that I want to propose today is actually to integrate these refugee children into our national education system. And even if we can't do that fully and now, we have to think of ways of how to upgrade and incorporate the existing alternative learning centers into our national system. Now, wait a minute, okay? So I'm pretty sure many of you have also heard of people telling you, but isn't the number too big? That there are just like 180,000 refugees? That's such a big number. Is that possible? Is it possible to incorporate 45,000 children into our educational system? Do we have enough money and resources? We are not a high-income nation. And we didn't sign the 1951 Refugee Convention anyway, so why are we obliged to do that? And the last myth, you probably also have heard of this, but these refugees are here only for a short period of time, aren't they? They are meant for resettlement anyway, so why should we invest in these children? Now, let's have a look at this table. Okay, so I give you a few seconds to screen quickly through this table, okay, to scan it. But before that, let me remind all of you that countries that host the majority of refugees and displaced population in this world are not high-income countries. It's not the US, not the UK, not Australia, not France. Countries that host the majority of refugee populations or displaced population in this world are developing countries. And among them are, as you see in the table, Jordan, Turkey, Lebanon, and few other developing countries. Malaysia is not one of them, but we are one of the countries that host a large refugee population. But compared to others, our refugee population is actually less, much less. Now, if you have had a look at that table, I can throw back those statements at you. And you can see that Malaysia is in fact, a much better position to cater to the needs of refugees. But when it comes to access to public schools, you can see that Malaysia is one of the countries, compared to these three countries, that does not allow access to public schools. With regards to the last myth, that is on resettlement, the answer is actually no. We think that most refugees will eventually get resettled, but the truth is that if you look at statistics and official reports, less than 5% of refugees do get resettled. 95% or even more will actually get stuck in limbo and remain in the transit country. So whether we like it or not, whether we agree with it or not, we have to face the reality that most refugees are to stay. So the next question, why educational integration? First of all, education is a right of every child. It is a right, not a privilege, and it should not be based on documentation or citizenship status. A study conducted by the Institute of Democracy and Economic Affairs in Malaysia reported that if our country allows refugees to get engaged in formal employment, and if we give refugee children access to our formal education, in the long term, roughly in the next 20 years, that leads to a contribution of more than 6.5 billion to our GDP and a tax contribution of more than 200 million each year to our country. There is a book that was recently published and it's called Framers, Human Advantage in an Age of Technology and Turmoil. If you have read this book, the authors of this book argued strongly that in order for a society and a country to flourish, we need to adopt what is called mental pluralism, and we need to avoid what is called mental monoculture. So what is this mental or frame pluralism? It is basically to allow a very wide, diverse ideas, views, and perspectives into our community and to leverage on this diversity. And the only way to have this is to have people who are diverse, people from various backgrounds, experiences, languages, and sets of skills. And the best way to do this is actually to start at the childhood stage, at the education institution, and with childhood socialization. Now you might wonder, so what can I do as an individual? There are many things that we can do. You can speak about this, you can write about this issue, you can reach out to people around you, and you can advocate and support. Make your voices heard. It can be a phone call, it can be a Facebook message or Facebook post, it can be a tweet, it can be a simple conversation. Remember that every big achievement starts with a small step. Thank you.